Okay. So yeah, I don't know. It looks okay to me, Amy.
Okay. It's probably me then. It's fine. I was wondering if there's a way we could cut the wheel post. Like if
Uh-huh.
we get a say if we get a number that's like 9.9.4 or something, and then can we like approximate that into
Well, you
9?
shouldn't get the way we have it working now is that it shouldn't get a number bigger than like 9.09,
I
right?
see.
Because
Yeah.
it cuts off at values greater than 5.1 or less than at any number less than 5.1 it'll cut off. So that means it should never
If
get to 5.1 or 9.1 or 2.1. It should always be a number between 2.0 and 2.09 or something. The
okay.
reason why we can't get it to stop exactly on 2 is that the numbers that are being generated are only evaluated every frame, but those numbers are being generated faster than every frame.
Mm,
So by the time a frame rolls around, you may have skipped the exact 0 crossing. So
I
we
see.
had to have a little bit of buffer space so that it can say, okay, wait a second, we've gone past it, let's stop now. And then we just trim that number off. But we caught it within such a small amount that visually, to me at least, they still look like they're in the right spot.
Okay, it's probably I think it's me being crazy too. I mean, with when we switch it out with fruits and stuff, it's probably less obvious.
Yeah. So let me show
Okay,
you
thank
guys
you.
one thing. Yeah. Let me show you one thing on my screen that I did do. I think this was in the lesson, but it's worth talking about real quick. Was that originally in the wheel position? Actually, it's not there. It's here in the parameters. So here in the wheel position, I think we had originally had something like plus 72 or something on this wheel,
Mm.
which puts that 8, see this 8 here, puts it right in the middle. And if you still have that, like all the logic will still work. So if I'm going to go ahead, don't do this. If you guys have already changed it to 55, just go ahead and leave it. So that's how we had it originally, so that when you're looking at the wheel by itself, the number that you're on is centered in the frame. But when you look at this, see those kind of are at the bottom of the thing because the slot machines, that face of the slot machine is angled backwards. And so the middle of it is a little bit higher up on the wheel. Draw. So yeah, the middle of it is higher up on the wheel, right? So that's how I just went ahead and played around with some values until I could come up with. You want to let me go back? Until I could come up with something that worked better, and I found that centered that better, and I found that this just plus 55 centered that a lot better. Ah.
Do they have to be the same number? So like, can we do like 55, 57, 55 if that looks better on my screen?
It's purely visual. So I mean, if the wheels all have the same parameters, see now they're right in the middle of where that line was. So if the wheels all are identical in the way that they're set up, then they probably visually should have the same values. Maybe you have a camera angle thing going on if your camera is not right in front of the slot machine like mine is. But yes, you could. those offsets don't affect the calculation of whether you win or lose. It's purely a visual thing. So if you feel like that fixes it and makes it look visually, go for it. I don't care. Okay, so how do I get rid of my annotation? Clear. No. Erase. There we go. Okay, so that was a good question. Any other questions on this? So one thing somebody emailed me about was they had a problem with their spinner 3, and it was their spinner 3 had a red X in it. So, and I was about to say, well, just copy one of your other spinners and paste it down here and change its name, but that wouldn't technically work because there's some special code in spinner 1 and spinner 3 that one of them sets the spin complete to 0, and one of them at the end sets the spin complete to 1. And this is something I don't know we've talked about before, but here in your chop exec 2 in your spinner 3, remember you can always figure out where I am by up here, right? So if I'm ever popped inside of something, you don't know where it is, take a look up there. Sorry, let me move you guys out of the way. All right, so here in your spinner 3, this was a little bit weird because we haven't had to do that before. Normally we just say, you know, spin complete like that. And that wouldn't work, even though it's not yelling at me yet. If I were to actually execute this, it would yell at me and say that I can't find that object, or that object is a none type. When it says it's a none type, that means that it can't find it. And so it assigns it to type none because the address you gave it, there's no object there. So the reason why we have to add this /project1/ is that here, where we currently are in /project1/ spinner 3, there is no object. There's no object called spin complete. So if you don't put a full address for an object, then it's just going to look in your current location. It's called a relative reference. It's going to look in your current location for the object, and if it can't find it, then it's not going to look anywhere else. It's just going to say, I can't find it, and then it doesn't work. So if you need to set a parameter on an object that's outside of the container where you currently are residing, or where this is this chop exec is residing, you have to put this /project1, you know, or whatever. If you've renamed your project, then it could be something else, but normally it's /project1/, and then if it's just sitting outside that, then the name of it's spin complete. You don't need another / at this end. If you did that, that would make it break, right? It's just /project1/ spin complete. So the person who emailed me about that, that's all you have to do is change that /. You had an extra / in there at the end, and if you take that out, it should make it work. Okay. Any other questions? How are you guys doing with with these strange times? Is everybody able to get food at the grocery store and toilet paper? It's been a real challenge. Yeah. Okay, good. All right. So there's no other questions? I'll give you 5 more seconds and then I'll show you something. Okay. We'll call that good then. All right. So yeah, so what I wanted to show you was a little bit more about logic operators and how they work in Touch Designer. So let me so the way logic operators work is that a logic operator is basically a way of asking your computer a question. You're asking a question about a math operation. If something is greater than something, if something is less than something, if something is greater than or equal to something, if something is exactly equal to something. And then the computer will answer with a 1 or a 0 for a true or a false. If you formulated that into an if statement, like we did in our simple and complex, let me just show you the simple because it's a little bit easier to demonstrate. What did I just do? Uh-oh. Somehow I've made this split screen and I don't want it to be. Okay, there we go. There we go. So if you do it in a if statement, so in this case we're saying if wheel 1 equals, and I think I mentioned this in the asynchronous lesson, but equals is a logic operator that is asking whether something equals another value, right? If you have a single equals, you're telling the computer it's this other value. If I said wheel 1 equals wheel 2, then it would set wheel 2 to be the same value as wheel 1, or it would set wheel 1 to be the same. It would actually, no, it would set wheel 1 to be the same value as wheel 2, right? But if you use equals, then you're asking. You're saying if wheel 1 equals wheel 2, which also equals wheel 3, which also equals 7. So if wheel 1 and equals wheel 2 equals wheel 3 equals 7, that means they're all 7, then print jackpot, right? So the way an if statement works is that if all of these conditions are true, then it will do what is on the next line and tabbed over 1. If not, if those aren't true, if any of those are not true, so like all of these might equal each other, but it doesn't equal 7, then it's just not going to do anything there, and it'll move on. And it'll move on, and so then it looks at the next condition that you have. The next is, so yeah. So if it isn't any of these, then it just moves on to the next condition and says, and the next condition we had was else if, which in Python they use the word elif just to be really confusing, but it means else if. So that's an else with extra conditions. So then this is the second thing it'll look at. Are all the wheels just the same? And if they are, then print matching condition. Else if wheel 1 plus 1, so you can do math operations inside of a logic operation. So in this case, we wanted to do this ascending condition, so we add 1 to the lowest wheel, to wheel 1 to bring it up to the middle wheel, and we subtract 1 from wheel 3 to bring it down to the middle wheel, and then ask if they're all the same. So wheel 1 plus 1 equals wheel 2 equals wheel 3 minus 1, and if that's true, then print ascending condition. Else if, then we do the opposite case. If wheel 1 minus 1 equals wheel 2 equals wheel 3 plus 1, then print descending condition. And then if all of those fail, else, which else never lets you do extra conditions. When you put an else, you can't say else if this, yada, yada, yada. You have to, in that case, you have to use the elif. But else is just else colon. And so if it's none of those, then print losing condition. If you don't necessarily have to have an else. If you don't have an else, it just won't do anything at all. It'll just go on to the next, if you have multiple definitions here, it won't execute something. It just won't do anything if the conditions aren't met. So you don't have to have an else. Okay, so that's one way, and probably one of the more common ways of doing a logic operation. But you can also use the actual logic operation itself as a number, as a value. So the true or false, you can use that as a value. So true is 1 and false is 0, right? So I wanted to show you this. I'm going to, and you can try and follow along, and then let's check in as to how feasible that is. If it's just a pain, this is something that we're not going to save anyway. It's just a demonstration. So don't worry about it too much. If it's too much of a pain, you can just watch me. But what I'm going to do is, coming from the render before the output, I'm going to insert a top, and I'm going to insert a rectangle top. Okay, and that's going to draw a white rectangle on your render field. And I'm going to change that to be a invisible rectangle. So I'm going to, actually I don't need to change the color. I'm going to change the fill alpha down to 0. So this is the fill alpha in the parameters for rectangle 1. And what I want to do is actually just have borders. So I'm going to change the border color from black. I'm going to use yellow. So I changed the border color to yellow, and it's still, you don't see anything because I have to turn the, I have to set the border width to be greater than 0. Okay, so just drag the border width so that you see a yellow square on your output. Okay, so basically I'm going to create a system to determine whether the mouse is within this square, and then use the output to, actually let's go ahead and on fill color for this rectangle. It's still set to white probably. Let's go ahead and set it to red. You won't see anything because the alpha is turned down all the way. But basically we're going to create a system that if the mouse is inside the square, it's going to turn up the alpha a little bit like this to show you, to color that square in red. Okay? So in order to do this, we're going to use some logic operators attached to the values coming out of the mouse, mouse input. So first thing we need to do is capture the mouse's position. And there's an object to do that called, it's in chops, and it's called a mouse in. Mouse in chop. And this gives you this over, so in the parameters for mouse in, there are different, on the output coordinates, there are 3 options. One is normalized, one is normalized aspect, and one is absolute. Absolute gives you exactly where you are on a pixel per pixel basis. So on my monitor, and this may be different on yours depending on what your screen resolution is, the far left is 0. Far right is 1439 on X value, and then the bottom of the screen is 0 on Y, and the top of the screen is 900. That is not that useful because your screen resolution may change. And if we were doing this as a class, it would be even less useful because everybody's going to have different screen resolutions and have different values. So then I think normalized is probably the best, which will give you a 1 at the top of your screen on the Y and a 0, or a -1 rather, on the bottom. and a -1 on the far left on the X value, and a +1 or pretty close to it on the X on the right of the screen. And that will actually match up pretty well for the location of this square, because right now on the rectangle, we're telling where it is by center position and size. How do I get this out of the way? There we go. So yeah, we have a center position and a size. Yeah. Okay, cool. So what we want to do is actually use these values. So in my mouse in, I have the output coordinates set to normalized. And we're going to put this into there's a other chop called a, what is it called? It is called a, formula? No, it's called expression. An expression chop. There it is. Okay, and an expression will allow us to put math operations or logic operations in the values coming into it. So let's see here. Yeah, so we have this. We have these values coming in. So basically, we want to figure out whether the mouse is greater than this value, the far left of this rectangle. If it's greater than that, if it's less than this value on X, which is the far right of this rectangle, if it's greater than the bottom of the rectangle, and if it's less than the top of the rectangle. So that is 4 different things. And then we can take those 4 different logic operations and add them together. And if they equal 4, then we know that this mouse is inside the rectangle. And then we can use the output of that to set the opacity of the interior of this rectangle. So let's see, how do we do that? We have this expression here, and we can, let's see here. We're going to actually need to duplicate this. Actually, let's send in between here. Let's insert an operator and called a select chop. And let's select on this one just TX. And then down here, let's add another one. Actually, escape. Just copy and paste that. And this is another select chop. And this one, we're going to make sure you clear this out and put in TY. If you just select it from the list and select TY, then you'll end up with both of them. So make sure you clear out TX and just put in TY. Okay? And then go ahead and patch that in here like that. And we actually need to do this twice because we need to evaluate 4 different things, whether it's greater than the left side, whether it's less than the right side, whether it's greater than the bottom or less than the top of the rectangle. So in order to do that, I can just, actually probably the easiest way is to just copy these selects and paste them. And now I have the same thing sent 4 times. Stop it. Get out of the way. There we go. All right, so now I have 4 of them. And I'm going to patch those into the expression as well. Okay, so I have X, Y, X, and Y. And here on my group, I can say channels per expression and number of expressions. We're going to have 4 expressions. I only see 1. Maybe I need to merge these first. So I'm adding a merge. A merge chop. And then sending that, whoops, actually, let's delete this. And come back out of the merge chop and go into an expression. Yeah, that's what I wanted to see. Okay, so if you got lost, all I did, I ended up deleting the expression. I created a merge chop and added the 4 different selects into the merge chop to create one object or one chop with 4 channels, and then sent that into the expression. Okay, and now on this new expression, set the number of expressions to 4. Okay, then you can click over to the expression tab and you see I have 4 expressions here. Right now they're just set to me.input value. But we're actually going to ask, we're gonna add some logic to this. So I'm gonna say, instead of me.input value, I'm going to say me.input value greater than, greater than negative 0.5. So look at the first channel here on this expression now. When I move my mouse over, as soon as I go over a quarter of the way past the screen, that turns to 1 on the first channel, the X. And it's a 0 other than that. There's no more floating point values. So that's false. I'm not greater than 0.1. True, I am. I'm sorry, not greater than negative 0.5. True, I am greater than negative 0.5. Now we just need to do the same thing over here. So the second one is the Y, coordinate. So we're going to ask if that is greater than negative 0.5. And so now you can see it's 0 when I'm down here, and then as soon as I move a quarter of the way up the screen, it turns to 1. And this one here, what would that be? Anybody want to jump in? This is the X coordinate. No one? All right, fine. It's less than positive 0.5. So that is for this right-hand side of the box. See how that changes 1. And then this last one is going to be the same thing, less than positive 0.5. And so now you can see when my mouse is in the center of the screen, all of those channels are equal 1. If I go up too high or too far to the left or too far to the right, at least one of those channels is going to flip back to 0. And basically, we're going to use the output of if all of the channels are equal to 1, then set the opacity of that square to like 0.5 or something. So we can do that with another expression chop. This time we're only going to use 1 channel. And we're going to change this, instead of me.input val, we're going to reference each individual input. So change this from me.inputVal to me.inputs open bracket, square bracket, 0, close square bracket, plus, copy that, me.inputs 1, 1, plus me.inputs 2, plus me.inputs 3. Uh-oh, what did I do wrong? Error list out of range. Maybe I have to say number of channels per expression is 4. Does that fix it? I thought I did this right. Oh, you know what? I think I have to, Hold on, let me try one thing really quick. I might have to like specify the name of the channel by index number. Yeah. Or by name. And if I put this as 1, okay, that's always going to be 0. Okay, I figured it out. All right, sorry about that. So if I set this to 1, oh no, okay. Yeah. Okay, I figured it out. Sorry about that. So the way this works is it actually takes input 2 different square brackets. The first square bracket is referencing which input, and we only have one input going into this, as you can see. That input has 4 channels, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 0, 0 will be this top channel. 0, 1 will be the second channel. 0, 2 will be the third channel, and 0, 3 will be the fourth channel. So me input 0, 0. Let me just copy this because it'll be easier. 0 plus 0, 1 plus 0, 2 plus 0, 3. And now you can see that I get a value that that goes between, that it's either going to be 4, 2, or 3. But if I'm in the middle, it'll be 4. Right? And actually, I think if I set this down to 1, did that change it? Number of expressions 1. Limit output channels. That's what I need to do. If I click on limit output channels, then it'll just give me the 1 channel. And see, that number goes to 4 if I am in the middle. Okay? So I can make this I can set this up even further. And here, let me see if I can. There we go. I'll make this bigger so you can see the entire equation, or expression rather. Me.input 0, 0 plus me.input 0, 1 plus me.input 0, 2 plus me.input 0, 3. Now what we can do is actually put parentheses around all of this and then ask if it's equal to 4. And then it should just give us a 0 or a 1 if we're in the middle of the screen. See, right now it's 0. If I'm in the middle, it's 1. Okay? And so now I can take that value and send it to my rectangle. So the parameters on my rectangle here, I'm going to go ahead and make my viewer active on this expression. And then on my, I'm going to drag the fill alpha in, or the expression 2's output into this fill alpha and make a relative, make a chop reference to make a relative reference. And then I'm going to take this value and multiply it by 0.5 so that it's not completely red. If I left it the way it was, it would still work, but it would be completely red. You wouldn't see what was under it. And so now if I go into performance mode and I go into, screen sharing has stopped. The screen window is closed. Does that not want to work? If I go full screen, what happens? Can you see that? Can everybody see this?
I think it's that you chose when you do the screen sharing, you were choosing a window, and then it thinks that performance mode is another window.
Oh, you're probably right. Okay, hold on. So let's see here. Share screen. I'm going to show you my entire desktop. Okay, this should work then. So now if I go into performance mode, wait, now I see nothing. Okay.
Jackson, I think this is a different file. You don't have like the lucky sevens here or anything.
I know. What's going on? Maybe I have two open. Hold on. I do have two open. Hold on. Sorry about that. Okay. Let me close. This is the wrong one. Okay, let me close this one. Okay, sorry about that. I was looking at Joanna's thing, and I forgot to I forgot to close it. So I had two of them open. All right, so if I go into performance mode now, there we go, and I make this full screen, then when I'm inside the box, it turns red. Now the Y is a little bit off. And I think that has to do with the aspect ratio of the screen. So like right when I'm crossing on the X, it works perfectly. But when I try to cross on the Y, it doesn't activate till I'm like down in here. Can you see my mouse? I can't remember. Can you see my mouse cursor?
Yes.
Okay, good. So we could change the coordinate system and that might fix it. Let's try that. Okay, so so on this rectangle, on the size, it says fraction aspect. If I change that to fraction, it will tell me what actual fraction of the screen is. And it's like 0.8889. So on my expression here, if I, on these Y values said, which is the second expression, X per 1 and X per 3, if I change this to 0.8889 and this one here to 0.8889, whoops, negative 0.8889 and positive 0.8889, that will probably be closer to what we want. So let's look at that. Only when I'm in full screen though, also, like, because the mouse is giving you the absolute mouse position whether it's full screen or not. And so now that's a little bit too far the other way, but it's closer. It still works on the X, it's a little bit off on the Y. So what I ended up doing is just adjusting these, and it was about 0.72. So we go to performance mode, go full screen, and now I could have sworn it was 0.72. Maybe it's 0.7, 0.68. Sometimes you just have to massage the numbers a little bit to get it to work the way you want. Well, that's even worse now. Oh, well. But you get the idea, right? So maybe it was more like 0.78. I don't know.
Jackson, can you
Yeah.
show your expression too?
There we go. That's pretty close. Yeah. So the second expression.
Yeah, because I like mine all of a sudden. Oh no, now I have something broken. I just want to see your
Oh, this one here. Yeah. Yeah. Let me expand this out. So me dot input 0, 0 plus me dot input 0, 1 plus me dot input 0, 2 plus me dot inputs 0, 3, and then all of those in a parentheses, and then make that ask if that's equals 4.
I get it. And I forgot. I didn't realize there was a parentheses.
Yeah, because otherwise it's going to be just the last one.
Yeah, I think I fixed it now. Thank you.
Because order of operations, I think it'll do those logic operations before it does an addition. Okay, so does that make sense to everybody? How that works? So you can use it in an if statement to do a algorithm, which is what we did before for the payout logic, and then we can also do this where we're using the we're using these logic operations to generate actual values that we can use to then further analyze or set a parameter to something, right? Because there's a lot of values that operate on 0s to 1, 0 and 1 ranges. So it's very useful to use that. You know, anything that's a toggle can be a 0 to 1 range. A lot of times you're going to run your, just like we did with the spin complete. We have a thing that's flipping from 0 to 1, and that's setting off this payout system from off to on, right? So anything, you know, if you can use logic to create an off to on situation, you can use that to run a chop execute, for example. Okay, so that's really helpful to use in Touch Designer. So I guess the only other thing I wanted to do today is let's go ahead and flip over our texture from the slot on the slot machine from numbers to the actual fruit symbols. Because the complex payout logic is, I'm going to go ahead and on my simple payout logic, I'm going to disable that again. On the complex payout logic, that's all set up for these fruit symbols. So you should have not in spinner, in the wheel. Yeah. So far we just have the text. Okay. So I meant to have you guys put in the fruit in here, but I didn't. Okay, so you go to the class website. Touch Designer. And you go to, when did we start this? Week 5? Yeah. And week 5, and you download slot symbols.png. And drag that into your, you can drag it right from your Finder into your wheel. And where instead of, see where we have text here? Just replace this flip input from the slot symbols, or from text to the slot symbols. And do that to each one. So, whoops, I don't want to do that. So copy this and go into wheel 2 now. I would not delete the text because it's helpful to debug things later to be able to switch that back over to text. But go ahead and paste that in and hook that up. And now we should have oh, let me get rid of the demonstration square. I'm going to just bypass it. We have slot symbols, and they work just the same way as the numbers do. It doesn't change anything as far as the payout logic is concerned. These are still numbers, but now they have symbols. So I think that's a win condition because I got no. I have to have like 2 bars or something. So yeah, that's basically all I wanted to do today. I'm not sure what my next asynchronous lesson is, but I'll have it up by Friday. By the end of the day on Friday, okay? Sorry I didn't get it up by Friday last week. We had so many meetings last week discussing how this was gonna work that I just didn't have enough hours in the day to get it done. So I am still available until 3 o'clock to meet with any of you individually. If you have individual questions on your work or your homework or anything like that. Other than that, you can leave the meeting, but right before you go, let me just tell you one thing I know that I do want to have done for not next Wednesday, but the week following is I'd like you guys to submit a proposal for your final project. And like I said, there's really no, the only requirements of the final project, here, let me stop my screen sharing. The only requirements for the final project is that it's in Touch Designer and that I approve it. So do something that's interesting. Oh, I guess there is one other requirement that usually it's a natural thing anyway, is that something in your patch, your patch has to have a research component. So something in it has to be something that we've never covered in class. Now, 90% of them, you guys want to do things that we haven't done in class anyway, but it can't just be, you know, like a slot machine with better graphics or new sounds, right? It's got to be something that we haven't covered in class that you actually have to research how to do yourself. And I can definitely help you on that research aspect and point you in the right direction. But yeah, Touch Designer, my approval, and something new. And then something creative. That's basically it. So email me your proposal and I will tell you, yeah, that's great, which is 99% of them. The 1% that aren't great, it's usually either that you're trying to do something that I think is going to be really hard, or that you can't really do in Touch Designer, or that I may ask you to add, element X or element Y to it to make it a little bit more complex. But 99% of the time, what you guys propose to me is something really interesting and really challenging. I think in this, with Touch Designer, making something that's challenging is not hard. That's the only thing that's not challenging a Touch Designer, is picking something that's challenging. All right. Cool. So yeah, there'll be a new asynchronous lesson on Friday. I will also email you some other homework that I want you to do. It'll probably be some tutorials to go over. Email me your proposal before. If you could do it a couple days before Wednesday, like before the Monday that we come back from spring break, that'd be better, so that I have a chance to actually read it and give you feedback. Also, if you haven't ordered your Arduino kit, please do so, especially because Amazon, do so sooner rather than later, because Amazon is like prioritizing necessary items for people, so there may be shipping delays. So get it in there now so that you get it on time. Okay? Cool, because I still want to do some Arduino stuff. It's going to be a couple weeks later than what's indicated on the website, and I'm going to go ahead and update the website soon with a new timeline. But yeah, I think we can still do that. I have an external camera that I'm going to mount on a tripod looking down, so that you guys can see what I'm doing when I patch things together. I think the biggest challenge in the Arduino side of things is just getting your little Arduino circuits working. But you're not going to have to do anything on the actual Arduino wiring other than copy what I have. And I'll be making an asynchronous video really clearly defining how to wire things together. And I'll have graphics that will demonstrate it even better than the camera. So once you get that working, then the Touch Designer programming for that is pretty straightforward. Okay? All right, so if no other questions, you can leave the meeting now, or if you want to stick around and ask me something, that's great.
I do have a question, because
Okay.
I thought the proposal was due today, so I sent it to you. If you approve it, will I get an email response?
Yeah, I haven't looked at it yet. I will take a look, and I will email you back saying that's great.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna.
I have a question.
Okay, so is there anything for the group? I'm gonna go ahead and stop the screen recording now. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the screen recording.